DFS DJ Nation, back again with another week. We are on to week 2. Week 1 was, a little rough. I think we got some things right, but we didn't get some of the involvement from the other sides on some of these games. But regardless of that, we are a forward-thinking podcast here, and so it is on to week 2. Back again with Maddie, as always. You can find him on Twitter at MaddieDFS. How's it going tonight?
It's going good, man. We got a little bit of a tight game here on Thursday Night Football between the Giants and Washington. So trying to keep an eye on that as we go through this. But yeah, week one was an interesting one. I don't know what would you call the biggest shock for you? For me, it was definitely Brandon Ayuk, not even sniffing a target and playing less than 50% of the snaps. And apparently he was dealing with a hamstring injury that we didn't know, was going to hamper him that severely. He had returned to full practice earlier in the week, and there wasn't any indication that he was going to be playing behind Trent Sherfield. So that was definitely a shock to me, but excited to bounce back for a fun week 2 slate.
For sure. I mean, there was a couple down moments, mainly because I had a lot of, Tennessee and Arizona stacks, which the one side worked out, the other one did not. And then I had a lot of exposure to that Green Bay game. A lot of Aaron Jones, a lot of Aaron Rodgers, and that I did not see that coming. And I don't care. There is no way in hell if you would have told me that Jameis Winston would have thrown 14 for 20 for like 180 yards, that he would have 5 touchdowns, I would laugh at you. But that is exactly the way that it turned out. A wild, wild game. But, it's week 1, so it is so unpredictable. That's why we always talk about, going light, not playing heavy. And so, anyways, without further ado, are you ready? Let's jump into it. Let's just get straight to week 2.
Let's do it.
All right. So this week is a little bit, so that we don't have Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs on this slate. So that kind of makes things a little bit more interesting whenever they are off the slate. So we don't have to worry about Travis Kelce or Mahomes or Tyreek Hill this week, as well as Lamar Jackson, because they are the Sunday night game. And then we have the Monday night game, which is the Packers and the Lions, which, I'm sure Aaron Rodgers will go off this week, but we can talk about that for Showdown and the Discord. Anyways, so this week in terms of pricing, you have Kyler Murray as the highest priced quarterback at 8,200. Then that's the only 8K. And then Russell Wilson 7,500, Josh Allen 7,200. 6,900 is Tom Brady, which doesn't make sense against Atlanta, especially the performance they just coming off of. I don't understand that. Dak Prescott's only 6,800, Herbert 6,700, which that game in itself has like a 55.5 point over under, which that is going to be where all the chalk comes from. Everybody's going to want to play that game, which I get. But I think there's some leverage off that game as well that we can talk about. But from there, you have Jalen Hurts at 6,500, Stafford at 6,400, Tannehill at 6,300, Kirk Cousins at 62, Jameis 61, Mayfield at 6,000, Trevor Lawrence 6,000, and after that. So, Maddie, let's start with you. Where are you coming in this week?
So I'm going to start it off with somebody you probably didn't expect me to talk about. And maybe you would because of the team that they're playing against. But I want to talk about the Minnesota pass game for a second. So if we look at situation neutral plays from last week, filtering within 1-score games, Minnesota checks in at 6th highest pass rate last week at 72%, and that's across 39 attempts. So it's not like, it was just, they were playing from behind or whatever the whole game. They made a conscious effort to throw the football and play at a decent pace this week or last week with a new offensive coordinator there. So that's, very encouraging for me to want to stack up a Minnesota pass game going against Arizona. And I know everybody's going to want to look to Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins right off the bat, and that's probably going to be a very popular stack. And I think you can get a ton of leverage just by playing the other side of the game. And you can even play Hopkins in that stack despite him being popular because nobody's going to play Kirk Cousins. And you can honestly run both Thielen and Jefferson together. if you want, because I mean those two guys are that entire pass game offense. I mean, KJ Osborne, we can talk about him a little bit when we get to wide receiver. I think he's in play at 3,100 to go with that stack. But I mean, they're without Irv Smith at tight end. They're not really going to feature, the tight ends that they have on the roster. So it really is going to be a concentrated Jefferson Thielen. And this is the same exact matchup we talked about last week with Tennessee, talking about, how Arizona doesn't really have any corners to cover anybody. Tennessee, they just didn't look right because they're not – I don't think they themselves have a new offensive coordinator, and they just didn't look right. They got away from play action, and Julio really hadn't had much time in camp because of injuries with Tannehill. So that offense is just way out of sync. So I wouldn't be sitting here saying that the Arizona's got one of the top defenses in the NFL, because that's not necessarily true. I just think Tennessee was more out of whack than anything there. So definitely really like loading up Kirk Cousins with Thielen and Jefferson for a low-owned stack on the opposite side of one of the highest totals of the week. Outside of that, it's really hard to get off of the Chargers and Cowboys. I mean, you've got those two big injuries, Randy Gregory and DeMarcus Lawrence for Cowboys, and they're not going to really be able to get pressure on the quarterback. And we saw even with the Chargers against a good Washington front last week, they only allowed Herbert to be pressured 5% of the time. So, they made conscious efforts to upgrade their offensive line in the offseason, and they did just that. And they kept him clean the entire game against a good front seven. So with a banged up Cowboys pass rush, I expect them to be able to do the same. Herbert should be able to do whatever he wants. And on the other side, I mean, it's Dak, right? Like he's gonna throw for a lot of attempts and a lot of yards, assuming that the Chargers are putting up a lot of points on the other side. So that game's going to be popular. I just try to figure out a way to be different with it if you can. Like if the field's going Herbert and running it back with Zeke on the other side, maybe you go Dak and run it back with Eckler on the other side as opposed to Keenan Allen, and be different that way, and try to get exposure to the shootout in that regard. So I definitely like that. And outside of that, I haven't really decided where I'm going to go for my third QB. Russell Wilson's definitely interesting at home against Tennessee. And the other guy that I have interest in is Jalen Hurts against San Francisco. I mean, we saw Jared Goff be able to march down the field multiple times against that San Francisco defense. And quite frankly, I just don't think they're fully healthy right now and a top unit in the NFL. And we saw how good the Eagles looked despite playing Atlanta. The Eagles looked pretty good this past Sunday. So anytime you give me a rushing QB like Jalen Hurts, I'm definitely in. And I think people are going to be very much off of him because they see San Francisco on there. But, San Francisco giving up 33 points to that lowly Detroit offense has me very intrigued about Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I don't mind that with Jalen Hurts. I mean, anytime that you're going to be able to get the type of rushing opportunity that he has, he is always in play. And I mean, I don't really think they had to do a whole lot. The only concern that not even a concern, but is the fact that they ended up. I think his average depth of target was extremely low. I think
which is good.
Yeah,
I prefer that for him.
And, yeah. So they didn't really take any deep shots, but they didn't really need to either in that game. I mean, they pretty much controlled that game from the jump. And so, I mean, the Philadelphia offense looked really good. But so I don't ever mind playing him. For me, Russell Wilson is 1,000% in play, 7,500. They're the third highest implied point total this week against a really bad Tennessee offense. I do think a Tennessee defense, but I think Tennessee kind of gets things a little bit back on track this week because they just got boat raced last week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they made the Arizona defense look fantastic, which was good for me because I played a lot of Arizona defense, mainly just because they were 2,100.
Yep,
and
I did the same.
I knew that they had Chandler Jones and some of the pass rush they have if they get to the quarterback, but I was not expecting that. And so, I love Russ. Russ didn't really need to open it up too much last week either. They hit on some deep plays to Tyler Lockett, but that offense they didn't really have to do a ton. But I like it's at home, so I do like Seattle quite a bit. Russell Wilson at 7,500 And then, I'm not going to talk about this game because it's obvious. Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert, I think both of them are going to be probably 1 and 2 in terms of ownership, I would think, or at least they're going to be pretty close in the top 5, I would think, in ownership. Everybody's going to want to play this game because it has the potential to go nuclear, and it's also inside of a dome, with playing, with the Chargers, at SoFi Stadium. So for me, I want to talk about a few other guys that I think people aren't going to be on. One of them is I have some interest in Ben Roethlisberger this week. They have the 9th highest implied point total this week. I know that offense, especially in the first half, didn't really look good, but the Raiders' defense, especially their secondary, doesn't really worry me all that much, right? And so I do feel like that with this is a way you can get a little bit different. You can, they have a lot of, whether you want to play him with Deontay or whether you want to play him with, Chase Claypool. I think you could definitely do that. But I just think this offense probably takes another step forward this week. They did throw the ball more than I expected. And so I do like that as well. And so while I do think the Raiders front is definitely much improved with adding Ngakoue and everything else, they were able to get to the quarterback. But this is just a little bit different of a game in terms of that. And so I think you probably see a lot of targets go to Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. And so I do like this. I mean, like I said, they have the 9th highest implied point total this week. And so I do like Ben Roethlisberger a little bit as kind of to get a little bit different. And then I like Sam Darnold. Again, played really well last week, and he was cheap. He's still cheap this week. He's only 5,200. I know people are going to see that first next to the Saints, but the Saints have a bunch of injuries. They lost even more pieces on that defense. Marshawn Lattimore is hurt. And then I can't think of the other guy who's also hurt as well. And so that's just more injuries to this defense. I think DJ Moore can absolutely expose that secondary. And I don't mind, if you want to stack him with Terrace Marshall. I mean, Terrace Marshall was second on the team in routes run per targets. And so I like Terrace Marshall as well. And so I think it's a really cheap stack if you want to pay up for running back. And because we'll get over there to it in a second, but there's a lot of guys at running back that are high priced that I definitely want to try to jam in. We have to always try to jam in Christian McCaffrey, because I believe over the past 2 or 3 years, he has never been on a given week less or lower than RB8 on a week. That is insane to me. Not 1 week has he been that he's played the full game. Has he not been RB or at least RB8 or better?
Yeah, that's ridiculous. You just play the guy. He scored 30 points last week without scoring any touchdowns.
Absolutely.
And he's not the highest owned running back every week either, because everybody sees 9.9K or 9.5K last week. And they're like, oh, I'm just going to play Dalvin Cook for 400 less or Kamara for 1,000 less, and they don't what Kamara score 12 points or something. And I know that was a blowout, but he got 80 yards and a touchdown, and he wasn't involved in the pass game at all. Meanwhile, the Panthers are blowing out the Jets, and McCaffrey's still almost going for the double 100-yard bonus. It's just ridiculous, dude. His usage, 30 touches, it's unreal. It is simply unreal. I don't know if we've had a fantasy asset like McCaffrey before.
He is. I mean, he is safe, but he also has the highest.
He's got upside. Yep.
So,
if he scores 2 touchdowns against the Jets, he's up to almost 45 points, and we're sitting here saying, "Oh, McCaffrey's going to once again be the highest owned running back on the slate," but that's not. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he's going to come in lower owned than he should, as always, because he's near 10K.
Yeah, and I think some of it's due to because it's what that people are going to want to play, right? I mean, everybody's going to gravitate towards Prescott or Herbert or Kyler Murray, and then their pieces are really expensive as well. So it's going to be tough to be able to fit him in if that's the direction you want to go. And so I think if you can get a little bit different and slide down to somebody like Ryan Tannehill, which you talked about at 6,300, somebody like that, or Kirk Cousins at 6,200, I think it opens up a little bit more and allows you to be a little bit different. I still want pieces from that game, no doubt, from the Dallas game. But I think you can do that and get a little bit different, maybe whether it's Mike Williams or something like that, or some other piece of Jared Cook. I think there's some different ways that you can get a little bit different here and still get exposure to that game as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you can hover in the low 6 to mid 6K range at quarterback this week and be completely fine, assuming you're jamming in McCaffrey too. Because there's Stafford's down in that range too, who we didn't even mention. He's going up against the Colts, who just got shredded by Russell Wilson. So he's definitely in play on a high volume pass offense that's not going to lean on Daryl Henderson and Sonny Michel. So I definitely think Stafford's in play too, even though we haven't mentioned him. So yeah, I agree. I think, this is a good week to pay down to, like the low 6K range for quarterback and fit in as many pieces from the other games as you can. Because I do think Kyler Murray is going to bring in some ownership up there, up at the top, and so is Russ should too after his week last week. So it's gonna be a different build, paying down at quarterback a little bit, especially with Dak and Herbert up there too, getting a lot of the ownership. So you can have a different build inherently just by paying down a quarterback a little bit this week. So I definitely like going that route, and that's probably going to end up on, the Hurts, Cousins, Stafford, or one of Herbert or Dak this week is where I think I'm going to end up landing.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to get away from that. Do you have any interest in Baker, or are you staying completely away from it because they're probably just going to run the ball and just run it down the Texans' throat? As of right now, the Browns have the second highest implied point total, only behind the Buccaneers, and this is kind of a good segue into running back too. My issue with the Browns is they've got two main pieces this week on offense, with OBJ already being ruled out. It's going to be Chubb and it's going to be Landry, and those two guys I'm expecting to be rather popular because they're playing Houston. People are going to say, oh, well, there's no other wide receivers other than Jarvis Landry. He's going to be popular. And obviously Nick Chubb, the whole stat around Nick Chubb being a heavy favorite in Vegas, per the sports books, he scores the most DK points that he's ever scored when he's favored by, a certain amount of points. And this is the biggest he's ever been favored. So there's just a lot of Nick Chubb love going around already. And, he has to go for pretty much 3 touchdowns or 200 yards to absolutely burn me, because he's not going to get a ton of pass game involvement because Kareem Hunt's still there. Kareem Hunt still mixes in. And just with all that, long-winded to say, the Browns are going to carry too much ownership than what I'm comfortable loading up on them to play them at. I'd rather play a lower owned like Minnesota stack against Arizona. Well, with that being said, why don't we just jump over to running back? Is there any other quarterbacks you want to talk about?
No, I touched on the guys that I'm focused on this week. It's going to be a very narrow pool. I think that, there's a handful of games we can attack through the past games, but I'm pretty narrowed down. Those are the guys that I'm at.
Okay, so then let's just jump over to the running backs, as we've kind of hinted at already with Christian McCaffrey's 9,900. I still don't understand why he's not over 10K, but regardless, he will be there soon enough. Dalvin Cook is at 9,100. Alvin Kamara at 8,800. Derrick Henry at 8,300. Nick Chubb 7,800. Austin Eckler. Mr. Austin Eckler getting goal line carries for the first time in his career. Had, I think, 4 goal line carries last year, which, last year I think he only had 1 in all of the season. So that is encouraging. Didn't have any targets, but I think that'll definitely change in a game like this. Jonathan Taylor is 7,200. Joe Mixon came out and smashed last week. I think he had 25 or 28, something like that last week. DK points, only 7K. Miles Sanders, 6,900. James Robinson, 6,400. Najee Harris is 6,300, which to me is way too cheap. 6,200. David Montgomery, 6,100. And then Chris Carson is 6,100, and Josh Jacobs, who's questionable again, is 6K. So talk to me about running backs and which ones that you are most interested in.
So I talked about Chubb. I'm probably not going to play Chubb, and it's not because he's a bad play. Obviously, you can play running backs against Houston. I just think he's going to carry too much ownership with some risk that, the points just get scored elsewhere, whether it's Kareem Hunt vulturing him or whatever, Baker throwing it to Landry or somebody random like Schwartz, because the Browns can't spread the ball around. But I'm playing McCaffrey at the top. I don't care that he's 9,900. And I don't care about the matchup against New Orleans. We talked about this last week. I'm not going to let 1 week of Green Bay no showing against them change my mind that the New Orleans defense is going to be worse than it has been, especially against running backs. So until we see, them play good for consistently for a handful of weeks. I'm just using the personnel that they have as a guide for that defense just isn't going to be very good. I just think, Green Bay, with all the distraction in the offseason, they just no-showed, basically. So I'm just chalking it up to that. Going to have a ton of McCaffrey. I like Eckler a lot as a pivot off of the obvious pass game pieces in Dallas and the Chargers. And the same thing can be said for Zeke on the other side of that game. A game where two guys are going to get all of the red zone usage for either team in a game that's going to be stacked heavily through the air. I think those are really good leverage plays for teams where you're not using those passing attacks. I like Jonathan Taylor, assuming his offensive line is healthy. They're dealing with some injuries this week, so definitely need to keep an eye on that. But he would be my run back if playing Stafford. He had a ton of touches and tied Hines with targets last week in a game that they were trailing pretty much the entire game. So that is very encouraging usage for JT. I'm not sure I'm going to end up on Montgomery despite Walito cheering for him in chat. I'd rather pivot to Allen Robinson on that team, which we can talk about when we get to wide receiver. But I think Montgomery at 6,100 after running all over the Rams on prime time, he's going to get some ownership. And then I really like Najee Harris for a bounce back candidate. I think he might pick up a little more steam this week. Last week he was really unowned. I think he's going to be a bit more popular, considering the fact that he did not come off the field. But that's why I like him this week against Las Vegas, is he will not come off the field. And I think his pass game usage is going to be more than the 3 targets he saw last week as well. So you've got a lot of guys, again, outside of below McCaffrey, like you've got a lot of guys in the 6K range. Again, same with quarterbacks. 6K range is very, very sweet for the running back position. And then if you go even a little bit below that, there's a guy at $5,400 that might be my favorite running back play on the slate. And despite this being a PPR site, I absolutely love Damian Harris this week at $5,400. We know Bill Belichick does not let rookie quarterbacks do anything against him. And Zach Wilson is in for a rude awakening against that Patriots defense. And also Mekhi Becton is out for the Jets for 6 to 8 weeks on that offensive line. So I'm anticipating the Jets to not be able to put up points, and I'm anticipating Damian Harris to run all over that Jets defense. And I think you're looking at 125 yards and 2 to 3 touchdown upside there for, almost 30 Draftkings points without catching any passes. So I really like Damian Harris this week as a pivot off of a lot of those guys who might end up popular in that 6K range.
Yeah, so I think for me, I think it's come in, not including the obvious names. I think it starts for me. I'm going to talk about Miles Sanders, who's only 6,900, right? If you look at him last week, ended up with 15 carries, also had 5 targets. He was 13th in weighted opportunities. His 17.3 was 12th among all running backs last week. He rushed for 74 yards, 39 receiving yards on 4 receptions. Did not find the end zone. But some other things he had a 3.90 yards per route run, which is 4th among all running backs. He was 11th in target share and 7th in yards per reception last week against the Falcons. And, we just saw this Lions just ferocious rushing attack just carve up this 49er defense, right? And so I think for me, like I'm looking at this and I'm saying that I think this is a matchup he could definitely exploit. And when you have Jalen Hurts on the field, we kind of saw it last year too with Miles Sanders, that he kind of opens things up for Miles Sanders because you're not just going to be able to focus on Miles Sanders because of the fact with the threat of Jalen Hurts always touching the ball. And so there was a really good start for Miles Sanders, and 6,900. I think he's a little bit of a leverage play off some of these guys, like even a Nick Chubb that's a little bit higher than he is, and and players like that, or even a Joe Mixon who's 7K that people are going to want to jam in as well, right? And so I like Miles Sanders at 6,900. I like that price. I think he's going to get most of the opportunities. I know Kenneth Gainwell is going to be involved as well, but 5 targets. If he can maintain that and get 5 to 6 targets a game, I am perfectly okay with that. And I think he makes for a really good play this week against the 49ers. And then I completely agree with Najee Harris. If you can get a running back at $6,300 who is not going to come off the field, who's going to play 100% of the snaps, you just can't pass that up, right? And it was a terrible game last week for him. Only had like 4.5, I think, DK points, something like that, or 5.9, excuse me. But I don't care. Against this Raiders defense, you can run against this defense. And so I like Najee Harris at 6,300. Now, there's one other guy that I also wanted to hit on as well, and that is Daryl Henderson. And last week, I was very surprised at the usage that he saw last week. Played 96% of the snaps. He was second only to Najee Harris's 100%. He also received 94% of the opportunities in that backfield, which is second. 11th in carries. He did only see 1 target, so that is something to monitor. But rushed 70 yards, 15.7 DK points last week, right? And so if you could get a running back at his price, right? They did not move him up drastically. He is still cheap. He's only $5,700. And again, if you can get a running back at that cost, I have no problem going there with him as somebody who's going to have. Now, do I think that is going to maintain where he's going to be getting 96% of the opportunities? No. But if you go back and look at Sean McVay prior to last year, that's kind of what he wants. He wants that workhorse back. That's what he did with Todd Gurley, and I think that's a lot of what you're going to see with Daryl Henderson moving forward. Now, I don't think he's going to get the same kind of target share that Todd Gurley got, but I do think while he is still in this 5K range, against an Indy defense that was just thrashed by Chris Carson a week ago, so I just don't have any problem with that. And Sonny Michel only had, I think, 1 snap, or 1 carry last week. No, Walito, you are 100% wrong. Sonny Michel is not going to be involved this week. You know why? Because Sonny Michel fucking sucks, okay? And so Sonny Michel is not going to be involved. I know you hate Daryl Henderson, but follow the touches. Don't follow your take lock bias, okay? That's all I'm going to say. Love you, Walito. Anyways, so 5,700. I like me some Daryl Henderson.
Yeah, he's definitely in play. That Colts defense didn't look great last week against Seattle. And the Rams offense is going to be good all year. And you have to respect Stafford in the past. And that Rams offense has always been able to run the ball because of the scheme. So, he's going to see probably 18 to 20 touches in this one. He saw 17 last week. So 5,700, 18 touches. That's pretty good. I'm definitely on board with that. There's 2 burning questions that I want to get your opinion on. The first one being the obvious question, the elephant in the room. The hottest running back on waivers this week. Mostert's out for the year. Elijah Mitchell sits at 5K. Trey Sermon's obviously going to be active this week. Are you touching the San Francisco backfield against Philly? Or do you think that, these guys are going to gain – Elijah Mitchell especially is going to gain steam to where you want no part of it?
So I don't mind playing. It's going to be ownership based. If he has somehow gained steam this week because of his price, because of what he did last week, and depending on where he comes in, because I think that's the most important part of the equation anyways. If he's going to be unowned, I would have interest in him at 5K. Yes. I think this rushing attack is one of the best of the league. It is the scheme. And I know that Trey Sermon is going to be active this week. He's not going to be a healthy scratch again this week. That's not going to happen. But I think that he is going to get enough opportunities. I think you could probably figure he gets 15 to 17 touches total in this game. And so I don't know how you can't have some sort of interest in that at 5K. He was not utilized as a pass catcher last week, but I think that changes. He was a capable pass catcher in college. He usually had around 20 receptions a season. And so he's not he's not a Christian McCaffrey or a DeAndre Swift where he's going to catch a bunch of balls. But I do think he's a capable pass catcher. And I think game script had a lot to do with the fact that he never saw any targets. But he still had 100 yards and a touchdown. Now it was against Detroit. But I do think that as long as his ownership doesn't get out of control, I think at 5K, I think you could go there.
Okay. And my other question for you is $100 below that. Josh Jacobs has DNP yesterday and today. Kenyan Drake sits at 4,900 against Pittsburgh. I would assume Kenyan Drake would become the highest owned running back on the slate at 4,900 if Jacobs were to miss. Is this Mike Davis good chalk from last year, or is this Mike Davis bad chalk from last year? Assuming Jacobs were to be out. It's a tough one because I don't know the answer. I have no input either way.
I think it's a terrible matchup because of how good this Pittsburgh defense is. But I think that
the pass game usage is going to be there. He's caught 6 balls last week for 60 yards. And that was against Baltimore. I think the difference
in that as well, though, is that if I remember correctly, Mike Davis, when that happened, he was 4K. I think he was minimum, right?
He was.
He's not minimum. Yep. He's 4,900,
and he's still busted at min price.
Yeah,
which is why I get kind of hesitant because I could see Kenyan Drake approaching 30% ownership if Jacobs were to be out, and he would be the chalkiest play of the slate because people are going to see Drake's name, they're going to see number 1 running back, they're going to see that 4K, that 4,000 salary starting. I know he's 4,900, but they're going to see the number 4 starting the salary number. And it's just going to subconsciously suck ownership to him because then they can play McCaffrey and they can play all these other guys that they want to play up top. I just don't know what I would do. I think part of me feels like he doesn't have the ceiling that I want, despite the volume that would be there. Because, he has to score a touchdown or 2 to burn me, right? Because he's not going to rush for 100 yards against Pittsburgh. The only thing that's safe is his pass game involvement at that point. I don't even know that he'd be the goal line back. What tells me he would be the goal line back over Peyton Barber? Just a legit bowling ball, Peyton Barber.
I think he would be the goal line back. He's proven that. He could definitely do that. He did that. That was his main role in Arizona last year. He pretty much had that role all to himself. He already played 40. Even last year, he played 47%. He had received 47% of the opportunities and played 48% of the snaps. I don't think Josh Jacobs is right. Josh Jacobs continually went off the field. Something's going. He has, that toe is not right. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if the smartest move would be to shut him down for, a month or month and a half or whatever and just, get him right. But I would venture to start to look like he's not going to play. But if he's going to have 35% ownership, no thanks. I'll be out on that. This is just a terrible matchup.
Yeah.
And it's not good. I think he could see some pass catching work, but much like that, Josh Jacobs back when, before they had Kenyan Drake, he wasn't receiving all that much pass catching work either. And so I don't know. We know Darren Waller is going to get 72 targets. He is currently on pace for, I think, 300 targets this year after his 19 target performance he got on Monday Night Football, which is just insane for Darren Waller. But regardless of that, I just couldn't do it at that ownership. And it's just a terrible matchup. If this was like a decent matchup, then I would have a little bit more interest. But man, this is about one of the worst matchups you possibly can get facing that Pittsburgh defense.
Yeah, and just looking at Pittsburgh's week 1 man versus zone split, they played about 70% zone, whereas Baltimore plays a ton of man coverage. So in man coverage, you're going to be, you're more likely to get chunk receiving plays out of the backfield because it's running back manned up with a linebacker most of the time. Whereas in zone coverage, it's you can have higher volume. But it's going to be a lot less explosive plays because the zone's going to keep everything in front of him. So he would need, probably 8 to 10 targets to really burn me against Pittsburgh, and he would have to score 1 to 2 touchdowns to burn me as well. 5K isn't free. And I think a common mistake that a lot of people make in DFS too is they see somebody as value because they're cheap, and they sacrifice ceiling. Because they're just trying to force in a cheap player on their team and not realizing that to take down tournaments, everybody kind of has to smash. regardless of what their price is. So, yeah, I think Kenyan Drake's going to end up popular, and I think I probably will not have any of him, assuming Jacob sits.
Yeah. Lastly, before we jump over to wide receivers, what is your thoughts on Javonte Williams this week at 4,400? I mean, he had 14 carries last week playing Jacksonville. That Jacksonville defense is atrocious. And do you have any interest in that, or because of Melvin Gordon's involvement, you'd be out?
Well, they played the Giants last week. They got Jacksonville this week, and he still had a ton of volume in a close game with the Giants, who looks kind of good defending Antonio Gibson tonight. So again, I just don't know with their timeshare. I don't know what the ceiling would be for him. I'd almost rather. Nah, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. I'm going to hold that in. I was going to say I would almost rather just play Mark Ingram for his 26 touches, but that I am not doing. I'm not doing that either. No, I'm trying to stay away from these timeshare guys if I can help it, especially because we have, like you said, Daryl Henderson didn't come off the field, 5,700. Najee Harris didn't come off the field, 6,300. You got Zeke right there at 6,200, which is crazy. Montgomery, 6,100. Like, I just think there's too many guys in that 6K range to flirt with these, committee style backs in the mid fours.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't think I would either. I don't think the upside's there for him. I mean, it's possible that he could just smash and they give him all the opportunities because he's got the hot hand or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I mean, they pretty much split touches straight down the middle. I think they each had 50%. And so, it's just Melvin Gordon's day looks different because he busted off that 70-yard touchdown at the end, right? But overall, I just think that I would. I just don't think I could do that even at that price. I do think Chase Edmonds though is interesting at his price tag. His involvement. He actually touched the ball. He was the clear-cut lead back last week, or the lead running back. In that backfield in that game. So if you want to get a little bit of opportunity or a little bit of exposure to that game, that's not the pass catchers, I do not mind Chase Edmonds at his price. And if you look at him last week, 56% of the snaps, 50% of the opportunities, 12 carries, 4 targets. He had 2 red zone touches last week. 14.6 fantasy points or DK points, and that is with 0 touchdowns. And so the risk of opportunity, I don't think he's going to be the goal line guy. I think that's going to be reserved for James Conner. But in a game that, could be high scoring back and forth, I think Chase Edmonds, carve himself out a bigger role as a pass catcher as well, more than just the 4 targets he had last week. So I do like Chase Edmonds a little bit, especially at his price tag. We haven't talked much about Zeke at 6,200. Really quickly, because I feel like we didn't really talk about Austin Eckler either. Let's talk about Austin Eckler and Zeke in this game, right? Zeke at 6,200 feels ridiculously cheap, right? He's normally a guy that's in that high 8K range. Are you playing him at 6,200?
Oh, absolutely. And it's kind of what I mentioned. Zeke and Eckler are elite pivots off of the pass game that's going to be heavily popular. And we saw this, and this is what I was talking about with our boy Derek. I got on the phone with him earlier today and just had a conversation, just about DFS and, the games this weekend and just, building DFS lineups in general. And, we were kind of looking back on this past weekend and just reviewing a little bit. And we were like, why were none of us on Adam Thielen at all when we're seeing Dalvin Cook as this popular running back against a bad Cincinnati defense, and none of us want to play Thielen or Jefferson because, anything can happen from the touchdown variance, and it's such a concentrated offense. Like if you're looking for leverage, Dalvin Cook is the obvious high-owned play. And if you're trying to pivot in that same game, because let's say you don't think Minnesota scores less than 3 touchdowns and you're fading Dalvin, well, you need somebody's going to score the points, right? And it's probably going to come from a concentrated group of guys. Why didn't we play Adam Thielen? So, applying that same logic if, you're not on lineups, you're not playing Dak and Herbert and Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, there's going to be a lot of points scored in that Dallas and Chargers game, right? So why not play the guys who are going to get the goal line touches or can break big runs, explosive runs for long touchdowns? And I think that's Zeke and that's Eckler. Eckler got, what did he get, 7 red zone rushes last week? I know he had 0 targets, but that's not going to be sustainable for the whole year. Like that's his bread and butter is catching passes. And I think that you see that change against Dallas, who just hasn't been able to defend that aspect. Maybe Micah Parsons helps that, but I think he's going to have to be involved with rushing the passer too, considering they have nobody to do that now. Long-winded to say, yes, I like Zeke and I like Eckler a lot.
I agree as well. I think not having any of them, I think, is a mistake. So let's just go ahead and jump over to the wide receivers. We have DeAndre Hopkins at the top at 8K, Stephon Diggs at 7,700, DK Metcalf at 7,600, Calvin Ridley at 7,500. Justin Jefferson 7,400, Tyler Lockett 7,200. Adam Thielen, 7,100. Keenan Allen at 7K, which is a travesty. Or not. It's ridiculous that he's only 7K. He should be much higher than that. AJ Brown at 6,900. Amari Cooper at 6,800. Deebo Samuel is 6,700, coming off that monster performance he just came off of. Chris Godwin at 6,600. Deontay Johnson 6,400. CeeDee Lamb 6,400. I can only imagine what his ownership is going to be at 6,400. Jarvis Landry, 6,300. Julio Jones, 6,300. Allen Robinson, 6,200. Mike Evans, 6,100. Mike Williams at 6,100. Cooper Kupp at 6K, which is, we'll talk about it. And then Antonio Brown at 6K. That wraps up, that price, that tier. What are we doing at wide receiver this week? And why is Mike Williams, which I like Mike Williams this week, but at 6,100, I don't get. Like, it's like they moved everybody up and then just kind of left everybody. Like, let's just move Mike Williams up, and then we're just going to leave everybody else the same.
Yeah. It's tough to push the Mike Williams button in the group of wide receivers that he's in. But if you're game stacking and that game goes nuclear, I think Mike Williams will be a big part of why. This is, kind of another topic me and Derek we're kind of talking about. This is figuring out this game, the Chargers-Cowboys game, pretty much hinges the slate, to be honest. And so, Trayvon Diggs is the only good corner that the Cowboys have. And you can, you have to kind of try to pick and choose, is Dallas going to use their number one corner on Keenan Allen just because he's their number one corner? Or are they going to try to match up player style, right? So last week, Diggs was on Mike Evans and shut him down because Diggs is a bigger, more physical corner, and he can match up with the bigger body guys better than he can the smaller guys. And that leaves, the smaller corners to match up with the smaller guys. So do they put Diggs on Keenan Allen, or do they put Diggs with the big body Mike Williams? If they're putting him with Mike Williams, I don't want any Mike Williams, and I want to play Keenan Allen. If they're going to put him with Keenan Allen, I want to play both, because then that means Diggs is following Keenan Allen into the slot, and that's not really where he plays. So, and you push Jordan Lewis out to a spot that he's not comfortable if he's going to play outside. So it's a very interesting dynamic, trying to figure out what Diggs is going to do. I do like all that to say. I do like Mike Williams, and he may be featured in another thing that I'll be doing this week or something. But I think wide receiver is similar to, the running back position. There's a lot of guys in the 6K range Allen Robinson, 6,200 against the same Cincinnati defense that we just talked about with Adam Thielen crushing last week. And I think Montgomery could end up popular. So I think it's the same exact leverage play. And you can play any of these guys that, we talked about the game stacks. So I don't want to hit on the obvious ones too much. I do want to get your thoughts on two situations. One being Denver with no Jerry Jeudy, because those guys are pretty cheap. Sutton played 80% of the snaps last week. He was targeted deep a few times on the few times that he was targeted. They're going to play a ton of man coverage, and that can be good for Sutton taking deep shots down the field. You've got Tim Patrick, who's going to probably move all around the formation, play some slot, play some outside. And then you got KJ Hamler, who's pretty cheap too, who's likely going to play mostly slot. So curious to hear your thoughts there. And then we're going to see how big your nuts are this week. Are you playing Brandon Ayuk at 5,500 now that there's quotes that he's fully back and he's ready to roll week 2 against Philly? Maybe they just said, he's back to practice last week on Wednesday for the first time in a little bit. We're playing Detroit. We don't necessarily need him. Let's have him out there as a decoy. And now that they're playing Philly week 2, let's get him more involved. He's had a week and a half to get his legs under him. He's going to be in better shape. He's going to be 0.00001% owned because people are not going to play him after last week. And he's 5,500 and has a 30 to 35 point ceiling. I mean, the kid's legit.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with playing him. I think, especially
I don't either.
I think you should be looking to play him because we know his ceiling is, and I think there's more to the story that we just don't know, and we'll probably never find out to this situation. By his comments, his very pointed comments, it sounds like more that he was trying to teach him some sort of lesson, more than anything, right? But it's easy to do that when you're playing Detroit, right? You can feel pretty comfortable because he was still active, right? And you felt like, okay, we're going to leave him active. We're not going to make him healthy scratch like Trey Sermon. I know there's been some rumblings about possibly missing a curfew or something like that, right? He was also dealing with an injury. But I think that this is going to be one that we look back next week and we're like, oh, that son of a bitch, Kyle Shanahan.
Yep.
Look, this guy's going to go out and fucking dominate, and everybody else sat him. And whether it's season long, whether it's DFS, nobody played him. Everybody stayed away from him. And he goes out and dominates, right? And so because, you can't do that against this defense or against this offense, right? You can't feel comfortable that, we're just going to win this game against Philly, right? And in this matchup here. And so I definitely think he's in play. And so I think people should be looking to play him. If he's going
I'm so glad.
Yes.
I'm so glad. Dude, nobody's going to play him after last week.
Well, and it's a good way to exploit just the week 1 narratives that we get. This guy's terrible, and and stuff like that. Like I don't care about last week and what happened. I do think that there was more just there's the team they were playing and just the way he's been talking. But now today he came out and said that it sounds like he's definitely going to be playing more. And if he's on the field, I definitely want some access to him because he's their best wide receiver they have.
Mm-hmm.
I like Deebo Samuel a lot. That's not knocking Deebo Samuel, but Brandon Ayuk is the real deal, and he's not going to get River Krokoff is not going to get snaps over him. Or I've seen people talk about like, should I in season long should I pick up Trent Sherfield? Fuck no. Okay, Trent Sherfield is not a thing. Okay, it's Brandon Ayuk. All right, they're trying to teach the dude a lesson, and that's clearly what I think they were trying to do there, and so. When it comes to the wide receiver, so yes, I definitely think that you can play him. For me, I am definitely in on Keenan Allen. He's gonna be chalky. I know that, but at $7K, it's Keenan Allen. He's too cheap.
Just be different elsewhere. Yeah, be different elsewhere on your Keenan Allen teams.
Yeah, the dude is an absolute baller.
Mm-hmm.
He is going to get all the opportunities. There's nobody on Dallas that I'm really all that concerned with. I think he's probably going to see, I just don't care. I'm playing Keenan Allen at $7K. And I'm playing A.J. Brown at 6,900. Like, I don't understand that. It's not like A.J. Brown had a terrible week last week. I know the offense didn't look great. But at 40 or 6,900, he still had about 15 DK points. So he didn't bury you. He just didn't get what you were looking for, right? And so I like that. I think this is a game that I definitely think this Tennessee offense kind of turns it around a little bit. And so I like A.J. Brown at 6,900. And then from there, going out, I 100% agree. Allen Robinson should be in everybody's lineups at 6,200.
He won't be
against Cincinnati. If you want to get this revenge narrative at that, with Andy Dalton, right, getting to play his former team.
True.
And so
Shout out Ryan Williams. Revenge
if Ryan was on the show right now, that's exactly what he'd be saying. You know, I'm all about that life, right? And so I like Allen Robinson. I also like Mike Evans. Nobody's going to play Mike Evans either. Mike Evans didn't do a damn thing last week. He's only 6,100. That is way too cheap for him. And so I like Mike Evans. Listen, the thing that I thought about all offseason about this offense is going to be every week you're going to have a guy who's going to get shadowed, and he's not going to get the opportunities, and he is going to phase out. Right? It's you have too many weapons. You have Mike Evans. You have Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Gronk. Right? You just have so many guys here. Every week, somebody is going to not get their opportunity. But this is a matchup against Atlanta that I want action on this game, because this offense is going to absolutely obliterate Atlanta. Okay. And so while, yes, I get it, you could say that they're going to run the ball and everything. It's not going to happen. They have to get there, right? They have to score those points. They have the highest implied point total on the week.
Yeah, and Brady is not at the point of his career where he wants to just turn around and hand the ball off when they're up by 10. Like, they will throw, and they will throw, and they will continue to throw until they're up by 35. Like, Brady is just, he's on a war path right now. And like we saw him do it last year. Like, he will throw 4 to 5 touchdowns in a game that they win 38-3. He does not care.
Yes. And so I do want pieces to this game. Right? And so I like Mike Evans. Nobody's going to play him. Everybody's going to play Godwin, who's 6,600. Or they're going to get to AB.
Why is he 5,600?
6,600.
Oh, 66. I thought you said 56. I was like, oh my God.
Oh, no. We'd be having a different conversation if that was the case. No, he's 6,600. And Antonio Brown is 6K. People are going to play those guys. They're not going to play Mike Evans after the performance he just came off of, where he scored 5.4. Give me that leverage off of him, and give me at 6,100 where Mike Evans can go out and smash this week, right?
Yep.
And so I like him as a leverage play off some of these dudes, especially off of Mike Williams, who's 6,100. I still don't understand Cooper Kupp. I'm playing Cooper Kupp at 6K. I don't care about playing Indy. I don't care about their old ass corners that they have. Cooper Kupp is going to smash that price.
Yeah, he's their main guy.
Yeah.
Why is he 6K?
I assume it's probably because the Monday night game. I guess that's probably why.
True.
They didn't get to adjust it.
True.
But still, 6K. I'm all about that live. DJ Moore, we already talked. I talked about that a little with Sam Darnold, but 5,900 for DJ Moore. And the most encouraging thing for DJ Moore was because last year it was different, right? Because we all thought that he was going to be their slot guy and get those, the short intermediate routes, and he was going to see a lot of targets because of it, but he wasn't. It was the complete opposite. It was Robbie Anderson that did that. Now, I know it's only 1 week, but DJ Moore back to the slot, getting a lot of slot, getting those, and not even necessarily the slot, but getting those short intermediate targets, which is what you want to see, right? He only had a 10.0 yards per target, which was 32nd among all wide receivers. So he is getting a lot more of those short intermediate targets, where he is going to come in clutch with his yards after the catch, because he is a yak monster. But I like DJ Moore in this matchup. They are missing their number one corner in New Orleans as well. So I like DJ Moore, especially at 5,900. I can't get away from that. And then moving on from there, just a few other guys. You already hit on Brandon Ayuk. What are you doing with Devonta Smith? Do you feel good to play him at 5,400?
I'm playing him in game stacks with Jalen Hurts, and then Ayuk or Debo and Kittle on the other side, because I think if that game goes nuclear, Devonta Smith is a reason why. I don't think I'm going to end up with Devonta Smith as a one-off at 5,400, because I don't see. I just think if he's smashing, that game is nuclear, and I want that in a game stack. I don't think I'm going to have him by himself. So yes, he's in play. Definitely in play for me. I just only running 3 teams will not have him. I would likely not have him by himself from that game. Yeah.
And then I guess let's just talk really quickly so we can move on about just some of the cheaper wide receivers. Is there anybody down, in the 4 and 3 and 4K range that you have interest in? Because I know I look at, like, Marquez Callaway is not going to have any ownership because he didn't do anything last week, but they only threw the ball 20 times. He still ran a route on I think 18 of the 20 passes. So he's still running routes, and so I'm not really concerned with him. But I like Marquez Callaway at 4,200. Nobody's going to play him, and so I do not mind going with him. I think that you talked about this Denver game. I do think KJ Hamler. There's been reports this week that he's actually going to be the guy who sees more opportunity over Tim Patrick. Where I think a lot of people thought it was going to be Tim Patrick last year because that's what Tim Patrick did last year. I still think they're still going to be in 3 wide receiver sets and all that stuff. Yes, they're all going to be out there, but KJ Hamler is explosive, and he
dropped a wide open touchdown too. I don't know if you saw that highlight.
Yeah. So we'd be talking about something completely different here had he not caught that, because he would have scored about 20 fantasy points, 20 DK points last week.
That was like a 60-yard touchdown, I think, or 40 or 50. Yeah, it would have been another 12 points added on.
Yeah, and so KJ Hamler at 3,800, 100% in play. Yeah. Bryan Edwards, like crazy what happens when you John Gruden when you actually
throw him the ball.
Yes. Because I know because we were all talking on our chat, as that game was going on, and which, by the way, the ESPN2 Peyton and Eli, I will never watch the regular broadcast ever again.
That was amazing.
The Eli and Peyton broadcast was absolutely amazing. And
for those of you who did not know that ESPN2 had a broadcast on Monday Night Football, I guess it's because it's new this year. Peyton and Eli are doing a broadcast where they commentate on the game. They talk about, coverages and strategies and things like that. But the cool thing was they were bringing in other NFL players, like Ray Lewis was on there. They brought in Travis Kelce on for a little bit. And Travis Kelce didn't even know that he was playing the Baltimore Ravens next week. And he was sitting there talking about, we're got to go back to the building tomorrow and get ready for our opponent next week. I think we're flying out to the Chargers. And they're like, no, Travis, you're playing Baltimore, who's on Monday Night Football right now. And then they bring in Russell Wilson too to close out the game. So that was really, really cool. I highly, highly recommend checking that out next Monday night especially because they'll be analyzing Aaron Rodgers, so that'll be pretty cool.
Oh, for sure, 100%. But as that was going on, I had a lot of showdown teams, and I had almost all Bryan Edwards on them. And for the majority of the game, I'm just banging my head against the wall because I had a bunch of really good lineups, but Bryan Edwards. And then finally, they decided to start throwing to Bryan Edwards, and then he had that touchdown that, was very close to a touchdown. Like, what was it, 6 inches away from being a touchdown? I digress. The biggest question for him is going to be, though, are they going to actually, start to actually give him more of a consistent role in this offense after he proved what he can do? But at $3,700, I'm going to have a little bit of interest in Bryan Edwards at that price tag. And then I'm definitely, I've already talked about somebody like, Terrace Marshall. I like that I like going back to him as well because he actually was second on the team in targets last week with 6. And so in this game that I think that has a little bit of shootout upside, I don't think it's going to be like some, monster nuclear game, but I think we could see at least a decent total here from this game. And so I do like getting some Terrace Marshall as well. If I'm going to stack Sam Darnold, I'm probably going to do it with DJ Moore and Terrace Marshall.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I like the Edwards call too, especially you're on Ben Roethlisberger. So that's a very easy, cheap run back, where a lot of people aren't playing Ben, but if they are, they're likely running it back with Darren Waller, right? You run it back with Bryan Edwards for free, and you can kind of play whoever you want there. I don't mind that at all if that's the game you're wanting to stack up. And then just one other name I'll throw. I briefly mentioned him earlier when I was talking about Cousins, but KJ Osborne, 19% of the targets and 23% of the air yards, which the 19% target share is in line with Justin Jefferson's 19% and Adam Thielen's 23% from week 1. So like I said, man, this new OC, he wants to throw the ball. He wants to throw it a lot. I mean, they were 6th in pass rate in neutral situations, and that's 1-score games. And that whole game was, tight. It's not like they were trailing by a lot and just had to throw the ball a ton. And Cousins threw 49 times. So 3,100 for a guy who saw 9 targets last week and is going to get, somewhat close to 20% target share. I'm in. I've had never heard of the guy until this past week, and I'm in. So KJ Osborne, 3,100. He would be my bargain bin guy.
I like that as well. Like, he definitely came out of nowhere. I mean, I'm like, KJ Osborne.
KJ Osborne.
Well, I thought it was Amir Smith Marset. I guess not. I guess we're going with KJ Osborne.
Is he related to Ozzy?
And so I don't mind that. Just a couple other dudes, and then we will move over to tight end. I forgot to mention Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney at 4,200. In this game that I like targeting this game a little bit, getting some pieces from here. He played 100% of the snaps last week. He did play almost 30% in the slot as well. He did see 7 targets last week, so that is positive. And so I like Darnell Mooney. He's going to be on the field. They really don't have anybody else outside of him and Cole Kmet and Allen Robinson. So if you want to get a little bit of action on this game, I do like targeting Darnell Mooney at 4,200. And then I want to talk about a guy that I had talked about him last night on our TFA show as well, and I think he's probably a better DFS play than he is actually a season long play. As long as he plays, he is a little bit limited, but he's still getting in practice. But that's Anthony Schwartz going against Houston.
Mm-hmm.
He is only $3,300, and while he only logged 50% snap share. He did see 5 targets, 3 catches, 69 yards. I believe he also had they also used him in the running game as well. And so I kind of like him. He was 17th in fantasy points per route run last week. They showed that, he's kind of the guy that they want to use. And if you would have played him last week, he had, double-digit DK points last week. He was bare minimum. But the dude is, for a lot of people that maybe not know who Anthony Schwartz is, he is a absolute electric dude. His best comparable is Curtis Samuel. He ran a 4.27 at his pro day, which equates to 4.32, which is 99th percentile. He also has a 84th percentile speed score. And, he was kind of a guy that people were kind of excited about, drafted in the 3rd round, and I know we talked about Donovan Peoples-Jones, last week, if you're wanting to play, but even Donovan Peoples-Jones did play 80% of the snaps, but he only received 3% target share in that offense last week, while Anthony Schwartz received almost a 20% target share in this offense. So I like him at $3,300 against Houston. I think you could see them take a couple deep shots to him if he can connect. He takes one to the house. We're in business, And so while, yes, I want to get a little bit of action on this Cleveland game, I just don't have any interest in playing a Jarvis Landry, or anybody like that. And I'm not going to play Baker. And so if you want to get a little bit different and somebody that's cheap at $3,300 with Anthony Schwartz, I don't mind doing that.
Yeah, Schwartz is a burner. He can score from anywhere on the field. Running a 4.3, that's fast. So definitely 3,300. A guy who's got, he's got a 20-point ceiling because he can legit go for 100 yards on only a couple catches and score a long touchdown. And that's what you would need for a tournament. But that is in his range of outcomes against Houston. So yeah, I'm good with that.
All right. Well, yes. So while in the chat real quick, while Ayers Chase at 5K, yes, I think you could definitely play Jamar Chase at 5K. I think T. Higgins is also in play if you want to,
the Chicago secondary is awful.
Yeah.
The cornerbacks are terrible.
Yeah, so Jamar Chase at 5K, that's still too cheap for him. It was good to see him actually come out and explode. That we heard all preseason of how bad this guy was. He couldn't catch. And you have to appreciate Joe Burrow coming out at their post-game press conference and making a snide little comment about, man, I thought that guy couldn't catch. So that was good to see. And so, if you look at the Cincinnati offense last week, they only threw the ball 27 times. But that was because they were kind of in that game and they were able to kind of and they had a lead for a lot of that game as well. And so they used Joe Burrow. I don't know if you're going to be able to do that every week. And I think you're going to see where they're going to throw the ball a lot more than 27 times. So I do like Jamar Chase at 5K or T. Higgins for that matter. I think both of them are in play at their price tag. But unless you have anybody else, we could jump over to tight end.
Nope, I'm good to jump. And tight end's pretty straightforward for me too.
Yeah, you have Darren Waller at 7,600. The guy, which is probably actually a value compared to how many targets that he could possibly see, right? But he is going to be, I think he's going to carry the most ownership, rightfully so. He's coming off a game where he had 19 targets, which is, again, just ridiculous, especially for a tight end. But you have George Kittle at 6,400, Kyle Pitts, who moved up at 5,200, Gronk at 4,700. No fucking thank you. I will not fall into that trap. And Dallas Goedert at 4,600, which is interesting because we'll have to see what's going on with Zach Ertz because he got banged up in last week's game. So if he were to possibly miss this game, which he's gotten in some limited practices, so he could possibly, trending towards playing. But if he does not play, I think Dallas Goedert at 4,600, I think is definitely would be in play. And then Noah Fant at 4,200, Hunter Henry's 4,300, Jonnu Smith 4,500. I don't know why I skipped over them. And then Tyler Higbee at 41 and Mike Gesicki at 4K. What are you doing at tight end?
Yep. So on my Hurts team, I will be running it back with Kittle on the other side because I think in a shootout game environment, Kittle can break the slate at that price. He's got 30-point upside. And if that game shoots out, there's a very good chance that Kittle is a part of it. And then outside of that, I'm going to have nightmares thinking about this for the next 3 nights, but Tyler Higbee and Noah Fant are basically the same price and basically getting the same role in their respective offenses. And they're both in Fant's in a better matchup than Higbee is, but I mean, Higbee still, he pretty much didn't come off the field. We talk about getting guys at cheap roles, cheap prices that are going to have good roles, high volume roles where they're not going to come off the field. And Higbee is turning into one of those tight ends. And we didn't see him explode last week, but his usage, they were actually designing plays for him. His usage, his snap share, all of that is very, very bullish to him having a very good rest of the season. So I kind of want to get on the Higbee train before it leaves the station. And I feel like he may go overlooked a little bit facing Indy, a defense that, people don't necessarily want to always attack. It's really those 3 tight ends. And obviously you can play Darren Waller. I just don't know that I'm going to have the salary for it, considering I need to play those 6K running backs with Christian McCaffrey. And we talked about, all the 6K wide receivers too. So I probably won't get to Waller this week, unfortunately, which they did a good job of pricing him up that high because 19 targets is absolutely ridiculous for a tight end. But it's mainly those 3 for me: Kittle, Higbee, and Fant. Fant with no Judy against Jacksonville is a pretty obvious play.
No, I definitely agree. They did use him as a blocker. I will say that quite a bit because while he played 100% of the snaps, he only ran 21 routes. But regardless of that, which was 19th among all, but he did have a 23% target share, which was 4th among all tight ends.
Right, which is so kind of what I meant by saying, they were designing plays for him. It seemed like when he was running routes that he was the first read, a good chunk of the time. And I guess that, I hadn't looked up his target share, but the 23% target share, I hadn't looked up his routes run, but the 23% target share tells me that, that they're consciously making an effort to get him the ball when they want to get him the ball, and even if he's staying in and blocking on other snaps.
No, for sure. He was 80.8 route participation, but his 6 targets was 10th, and then 23% target share. But it wasn't even just that. He also saw an end zone target, which is encouraging. He was also 3rd in yards after the catch as well. So and 4th in yards per route run. So those are 2 metrics that I always look at, and when it comes to any pass catchers. So I think there's a lot to like here with the guy, especially a guy that's going to play 100% of the snaps. Like, I'm about that life because that's all we're really looking for, especially at tight end and especially at that price. And so, while yes, it's a little bit more, it's definitely the difficult more of the matchup, but I like Tyler Higbee this week quite a bit. I want to talk about a less obvious guy, in terms of where people are going to be coming in on, and that's Adam Troutman at 3K. He kind of was left for dead this past, because of he got hurt over in preseason, and while he was playing in preseason, he wasn't really utilized all that much, so people really thought too much into it, and people kind of left him for dead. I held strong, and I'm happy that I did, because while if you look at the box scores, if you just looked at their just common stats, you would say, well, but Juwan Johnson had 2 touchdowns last week. He should be the guy that we want. No, because he barely played and he barely ran any routes. I think he ran like 4 or 5 routes the entire game. He just happened to be the 2 were, end zone targets, right? Where Adam Troutman played 60% of the snaps. He ran 14 routes on 14 pass routes, and they only threw the ball 20 times. He had a 30% target share. Again, they didn't throw very much, but still, 42% target rate, which is fifth among all tight ends, or fifth among all wideouts. And then, so I think there's some juice here with this play at 3K. And so I think that nobody's going to want to play him because he didn't do anything last week. He only had 4.8 DK points. But I think this is a game that they're going to have to throw the ball a lot more. They're not going to be able to throw the ball 20 times in this game. I can guarantee that. And so I like Adam Troutman. They still don't – I mean, it's him, Marquez Callaway, and I guess Deontay Harris, obviously Alvin Kamara. But, in terms of just their pass catchers, I think he's the guy right now. Him and Marquez Callaway still look to be the guys. And so nobody's going to play Adam Troutman, and I think that that's a mistake, and I like Adam Troutman this week at 3K.
I won't go there, but, you can how about you go there, take some pictures, and, send me a T-shirt and let me know how the rides were and report back to Mission Control.
Hey, whenever he just smashes this week, it has 20 DK points. I'm going to be –
We're going to Disney World.
Yeah. And so other than that, I think Cole Kmet is definitely in play at 3,700. He's clearly the guy. I don't know why they still have Jimmy Graham on that offense, but Jimmy Graham didn't really do shit. But I do like Cole Kmet at $3,700. And then I think Gerald Everett's another guy if you want to get action, as a part of a game stack. I think you could do that as well. So I do like that. Past that, do you have anybody else you want to talk about at tight end? I mean, I think there's some other guys, obviously, that are just kind of, if you're playing a game stack like Jarwin, I think would be somebody. We talked about Jared Cook. I think he would also a guy that I would want to include in a game stack as well.
Absolutely.
Or I think you could play him, by himself as well. I mean, he's only 3,900 as well, so he's still really cheap.
And Dallas plays a ton of zone too, which is good for tight ends.
So other than that, I mean, if you don't have anybody else, let's just jump over to the defenses where you have the high-priced Rams at 4,500, Buccaneers, which is insane to me. No thanks. I'm not playing $4,500 Rams. I ain't doing it.
No,
can't make me. The Bucs were 4,100. Broncos are 3,800 against the Jags. The Patriots are $3,700. The 49ers are 3,600. I don't get why they're that probably up, but whatever. And then let's just drop back down to the bottom where you have the Texans at 2K, you have the Falcons at 2,100, the Vikings at 2,100, the Titans at 2,200, the Jets at 2,200, the Jaguars at 2,300, the Cowboys at 2,400. What are we doing at defense? I'm just paying down. I'm just going to see whoever fits in, and we're going to go from there.
Yeah, I always pay down as well. Just from looking at, so what got us both on the Cardinals defense last week against Tennessee is, you're in lineups that you're not playing, Tannehill and such and stacking that game, that's a good game to get a defense from if you're fading it because there's going to be a lot of pass attempts in that game. We were assuming there was going to be a lot of pass attempts in that game. And so we played the min price or $2,100 Cardinals and it ended up working out very well. Because, defenses get fantasy points when quarterbacks drop back to pass. So just thinking about that, it's the same principle on teams where you're not playing Minnesota, Arizona. I like the Vikings at 2,100 against Arizona. I mean, Arizona has shown that they're going to throw the ball a lot. And Kyler Murray, he can make some mistakes and turn the ball over occasionally. So he can do some wild things. Definitely like, Minnesota as a complete punt defense. If I was paying up, I absolutely would pay, if prices weren't a thing, I absolutely would pay $3,700 for the Patriots defense against Zach Wilson because we know Bill Belichick does not allow rookie QBs to do anything in their rookie year. So by throwing, different coverages that they've never seen before at them and whatnot, which is why I love the idea of a Patriots defense, Damian Harris stack, if you can make it work. But 3,700 is a lot to ask. So yeah, I'm going to end up paying down. Is there anybody in the 2,500 to 3K range? Because sometimes I find myself falling in that range for a defense, and I'm curious if you've got anybody there.
I think if you wanted to, I think that the Panthers make for an interesting play because you just know Jameis can get a little, I don't give a fuck attitude, make some bad decisions, take one to the house. So at $2,700, I think the Panthers, the Raiders, like I said, they were able to get a lot of pressure on Lamar Jackson on Monday Night Football because of that improved offensive line with Max Crosby and Ngakoue, who they added over the offseason. Carl Massive. So, I mean, they were able to kind of, get a lot of pressure on him. So I don't mind that if you want to do that with Pittsburgh. Big Ben is a statue back there. Their offensive line is terrible. And so, if Ben makes mistakes, throw a couple of interceptions, maybe get some sacks, I don't really mind it. But other than that, I mean, that's kind of where I would come in I guess the Bears at 2,800 at home, but
yeah, Bears 2,800, Steelers 3K, and then the only other team that I saw that you hadn't mentioned is Eagles at 2,400 against San Francisco. If you're not stacking that game, because Jimmy G, he can make some mistakes too. He's not turnover free.
No, for sure. Well, do you have any other defenses, or are we going to jump over and build this squad?
No, let's build this team and get the heck out of here.
All right. So as we do every week, we build put together a lineup, build a team, and we'll see how it does after everybody we've talked about. So why don't you kick us off? Where are we going with first?
I'm gonna set the tone this week. We're going with Kirk Cousins as our QB.
All right. Well, then let's just lock in. I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson.
All right, and we're going to run it back with Hopkins on the other side. So you can play Hopkins here despite him being popular because nobody's going to stack Minnesota. So you have a unique build.
All right, let's plug in to get a little bit of action on this game. I'm going to plug in Zeke at 6,200.
All right, and let's go ahead and just round out our Cousins stack with KJ Osborne.
All right, so we got 47.25 per position. We still have a running back, tight end, flex, and defense left to go. Ooh, I don't know if we'll be able to. I don't know if we could do it. I was going to see it if we played McCaffrey at 9,900. That would only leave us 3K for a tight end, flex, and defense.
We can make it work.
All right.
Just go Schwartz in the flex. I think for now as a placeholder, and then let's play with some salary.
So let's just go like bare minimum or near bare minimum, I guess.
Yeah, so you need 3,700 is the highest tight end you can play. It's Komet against Cincy. I don't know that I'd want to play both Osborne and Schwartz, though, on the same team. It feels a little too thin.
Well, let's do this. I'm going to drop out of Chris McCaffrey because we just really have no other outs. And I will let's see. Well, fuck it. Let's just go with the other side of that game. Let's go with Alvin Kamara.
All right.
That should leave a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, we should be able to do a little bit better with that. I'll lock in. Let's go with a mini. I still want to kind of mini stack Dallas and the Chargers. Let's throw in Jared Cook.
Yeah, I already had him in. Okay. Oh, 4,200. I can do something with this. If I guess we go to Texans defense, but I don't know if I want to do that.
I like Vikings. Oh wait, we're stacking that game, so never mind. I would say let's try to get to the Eagles D if we can. 2,400. Is there anybody 3,800 you like?
Oh, for sure. You know who you're talking to right now?
True. Oh, KJ Hamler.
We could go KJ Hamler at 3,800.
Yeah, just do that. Easy game.
Or Brian Edwards at 3,700.
I vote Hamler. Since we can afford to be a little chalky since we have a pretty unique build here.
Okay. Well, we used Hall 100%. We go Kirk Cousins, Zeke, Alvin Kamara, Justin Jefferson, DeAndre Hopkins, KJ Osborne, Jared Cook, KJ Hamler, and Eagles defense.
A lot of K's and J's in that lineup.
Hey, we're going to get paid. That's all I know.
K's and J's get you paid, baby. That's
so anyways, yeah. So I think that pretty much wraps up week 2. I think there's a lot of a lot of stuff we talked about tonight. I think there's a lot of teams or a lot of games that you can stack, try to get a little bit different in. But other than that, you got anything else?
Nope. I'm ready for a better week 2 than what week 1 was. It was a little bit of a letdown. A lot of spots and teams that we were excited about. Tennessee and Green Bay being 2 of the main ones that kind of let us down. So looking for some bounce backs across the board in week 2.
No, for sure. So anyways, I appreciate everybody checking out the show. If you're watching on YouTube live, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening to this on podcast, be sure to leave us a rating and review. You can find us at DFS DJ Nation through your podcast stream. If you are watching on YouTube, just head over. You can listen to the pod, DFS DJ Nation pod. We are not under the Fantasy Authority stream. This is our own setup we have going here. I hope everybody wins a lot of money. For Matty, you can find him on Twitter at MattyDFS. You can slide into DMs or into our Discord. We have an absolutely free Discord with a DFS channel set up. You can find that link in the description. It's a good way to just come in. We can talk. We'll be talking DFS, especially probably Saturdays into Sunday morning, kind of talking about some of the different things that are going to be coming up, with injuries and everything else. We can talk about plays and everything else. Or if you just have any questions, I know Matty was in there waxing poetically, just dropping nuggets on some of the guys last weekend, getting them ready. And I think they stole the lineup that he posted in there. That would be a good lineup for cash from him. But regardless of that, I'm Kevin Steele. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyRat13. We will see you in them DFS streets. But until next week,
we out.